Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today during Congresswoman Blunt Rochester's presentation. My name is Iris Turner, and I'm Congresswoman Blunt Rochester's Deputy State Director, Iris Turner. With such historic legislation passed last Congress, including the American Rescue Plan, also known as ARPA, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Chips and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Safer Act, and the Honoring Our Pact Act, there's a lot of federal funding available to strengthen our economy, cut costs for Americans, saving our planet, and more. Because the Congresswoman is a member of the Regional Leadership Council, a group of 12 members of Congress appointed to help lead the implementation and communication of the transformative legislation, it's important to her to connect Delawareans with these resources and grants and funding opportunities through her upcoming webinar series that we're currently having today. This is the second webinar that we posted on the benefits of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. If you missed our first webinar on funding opportunities with the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, you can find the recording on our website. To make sure you receive notifications about future webinars, you may sign up for our newsletter on our website at bluntrochester.house.gov. To make sure you receive information and notifications about future webinars, you may sign up for our newsletter on our website and also look at other past ones as well. Our special guests and lead presenters from DOE are Spencer Thibodeau, Deputy Assistant Secretary, and we also have Yusuf Zigzad, Legislative Affairs Coordinator with the U.S. Department of Energy as well. Spencer and Yusuf will review their presentation on DOE grants, application process, and different programs they have, and other resources that are available to interested applicants. After the presentation, we'll head to a question and answer portion of the event, which will have questions that you submitted ahead of time. If you have any technical difficulties at any point during the webinar or need assistance, please call our main office line at 302-830-2330. Again, a recording of this webinar will be available after the event on our website, and we'll send it in our weekly newsletter. Now I'll turn it over to the DOE to present to us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Iris, and hello, Delaware. It is so amazing to be with each of you today. My name is Spencer Thibodeau. I'm the newly minted Deputy Assistant Secretary for Intergovernmental Affairs, and just really excited to be joining you here as we head into implementation season. Now, I'm not from Delaware myself, I'm from Maine. And I'd always considered Maine to be the first state until I was younger and I was driving along the road and I saw this license plate, and there on your license plate, it says Delaware, the first state. So I'm excited to meet some first staters. But the issues that we're here to talk about today doesn't matter whether you're first, you're second, you're third. You know, what we're here to talk about is deploying. And that is what the agency is taken on. To do that today, to help us kind of walk through this, is a good friend of mine, Yusuf, who's going to talk to you a moment. But I just want to kind of culminate by saying my office sits within the Congressional and Intergovernmental Affairs Office. And so what I tell people often is you can't ask too many questions. And if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So make sure you're keeping up with energy.gov on a daily basis so you can keep track of any announcements or opportunities that are put out on a daily basis, but also make sure you're reaching out. And so we'll make sure our contact information is shared with you all. We want to hear from you. That's why we're here, and we're responsive. And so just huge thank you to you for taking the first step and coming to this webinar today. We look forward to the next steps and working with you. And with that, let me turn it over to my good friend, Yusuf. Take it away, my friend.
Thank you, Spencer. Appreciate it. As Spencer noted, I'm Yusuf Naqzad, Legislative Affairs Coordinator for the Office of the Undersecretary for Infrastructure. And so as you'll see a little bit later in the presentation, the Office of the Undersecretary for Infrastructure is really tasked with implementing the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, also known as BILL, and the Inflation Reduction Act, also known as IRA. A couple of thank yous at the top. Thank you to Congresswoman Blunt Rochester for her support of these massive, cascading pieces of legislation. I think they're going to have certainly a major impact on our clean energy future, our energy security, and the modernization of our nation's infrastructure. And I'd also like to thank the Congresswoman's staff for inviting us and hosting us here today. And last but not least, all of the attendees. As Spencer noted, our contact info is at the end of this presentation. I will share these slides in a PDF form after the presentation. And then, as Iris mentioned at the top, we'll be sharing a recording of the presentation as well. So getting into it, just a quick agenda here. I'll give you a quick overview of the Office of the Undersecretary, sort of to better visualize how DOE is looking at these investments and these mandates from Congress on implementing these new programs and provisions. Next, we'll go into sort of a program level overview of both of these pieces of legislation, bill and IRA. And so this involves going through the grant application process. A lot of the acronyms that we see at the federal level, help parse some of those out, get some program highlights, and then technical assistance and resources. You know, how you can best position your organization to be successful in a grant or formula application. And then we'll open it up for questions, as Iris mentioned. And so just more broadly here, a little history on the Office of the Undersecretary for Infrastructure, established in 2021, shortly after the passage of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, as part of a larger reorganization of the Department of Energy to help better position us to deploy, as Spencer mentioned, these massive investments that Congress delivered to us. And so it's really engaging at the community level, at the state level, and at the local level to really help deploy these clean energy technologies as effectively and as efficiently as possible, while ensuring that we have community buy-in and that, you know, some of our most disadvantaged communities have access to these investments as well and are reaping the benefits of them too. We'll get into that a little bit further as well. And so looking more broadly again at sort of our mission here, the two on the left are somewhat, not completely, but somewhat newer missions of the department and of the Office of the Undersecretary: lowering energy bills for households and businesses, and then creating good jobs, boosting energy supply chains and domestic manufacturing capacity here at home. So that involves onshoring and reshoring a lot of the critical mineral and critical supply chains that we've seen sort of leave our country over the past several decades. The two little bubbles on the right there, you know, world-class next-gen clean energy technologies and making the energy system more secure, reliable, and resilient. These are longer-lasting missions of the department. You know, as when it comes to the basic science research that we do at the department, all the way up to sort of the demonstration phase of these technologies. The Office of the Undersecretary is really looking to take some of that basic science, and then now we're transitioning into the larger scale demonstration and finally commercial deployment phase of those technologies. This is a high level overview of what we are tasked with at the department from Bill and Ira and from Congress. And so looking here, I won't go through all of these bubbles, but that middle bubble, $90 billion, over $90 billion in grants and rebates, and then $250 billion plus in loans and loan guarantees. So this is access to capital that otherwise would have had to go through some more, you know, cumbersome, and I guess in the financial sector, they say impatient capital on the commercial side or through a third party lender that we can do out of our loan programs office with the authority granted to us by Congress in these two bills. And so some marquee ones that I think have been, you know, top of mind for folks as we have conversations throughout the department. The efficiency and electrification of buildings, including homes, schools, nonprofits, increasing the resilience and reliability of our electric grid. You see there on the right side, EVs and charging. I'll get into this a little bit later, but the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law created the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation for this very purpose, to deploy a nationwide EV charging network that hits every pocket of the country. And so the Department of Energy certainly plays a role in the strategy and planning around a lot of those investments too. And here again, I know org charts are a lot of fun, but I included this in here just to, like I said earlier, better visualize how we are looking at these investments. And so here in the blue boxes, you'll see the program offices that are under the scope of the Office of the Undersecretary. And then in those bullets, these are the programs from Bill and Ira that each of these offices are deploying. As you can see, some that I want to highlight: the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, OCED or OCED. They're running point on carbon capture, on clean hydrogen, advanced nuclear, industrial decarbonization. As I mentioned earlier, the manufacturing and energy supply chain, somewhat of a newer mission for the department, created this new office called MESC that's really taking the lead on partnering with OCED on industrial decarbonization, battery manufacturing, recycling, and then a lot of our supply chain work too. And then another one that I would like to highlight for you all, and we'll share additional details later in the presentation, is on the Office of State and Community Energy Programs, SCEP. And so this office is new, but it folds in some of our legacy programs, like the Weatherization Assistance Program, which helps low-income households upgrade, windows, insulation, roofing to better weatherize their homes and make them more efficient while also lowering energy bills. And then the whole home and electrification rebates, which were a new program that I will also share additional details on. I know there's a lot of interest around here. The legislation provides rebates for the purchase of energy efficient electric home appliances, as well as energy efficiency improvements. So similar to the Weatherization Assistance Program, things like window upgrades, things like roof upgrades, insulation, things like that. And so I mentioned at the top here a lot of the work and the special attention that we're paying to community buy-in and ensuring that communities are really reaping the benefits of this work. Justice 40 plays into this. Justice 40 is an executive order that the president signed, I believe his first day in office, noting that major infrastructure projects should 40% of such projects should flow to disadvantaged communities. These are energy communities in former coal communities, communities under a certain income threshold, that sort of thing. We're paying a special eye toward diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility in our program design. So ensuring that once these programs are rolled out, that they're accessible, that our application processes aren't too cumbersome for organizations and folks who aren't terribly well resourced. We want to bring in as many people into the fold and create as many opportunities as we can here. The third piece you see there, good jobs. I think this one sort of explains itself. We want strong labor partnerships in the creation of these larger infrastructure projects, especially. But then again, we also, after the construction phase, once we're in the sort of, say for a hydrogen hub, once it continues running after it's built, we want those to be good union jobs as well. And so ensuring that those are permanent, well-paying jobs is definitely top of mind across the department. And then that last bullet point that you'll see there, workforce and community agreements. This is something I believe relatively new that the department's doing, community benefits plans as part of applications. And so this is when an applicant submits, sort of a narrative based sort of packet that demonstrates that they have community buy-in on a given infrastructure project that would be funded by the bill or IRA. As you can see here, they're required for most of our programs, and they're a scored component of many of our applications. And we see this in two sort of lenses. One, because we think it's the right thing to do to ensure that, communities are bought into these infrastructure projects, and, some outside organization isn't bringing a project into your backyard that you don't really know what's going on or you're not terribly sure about it. But also, two, we see this as a big part of our risk management plan. Based on sort of our history here, we've seen that projects that have strong community buy-in generally perform better than ones that don't, and they're more viable in the long term. And so definitely an important piece in the implementation process here. I also wanted to touch on, before we get into the program highlights and overviews, some of the mechanics of the application process, both for competitive grants as well as for formula grants. And so here's a flow chart for competitive grants. You'll see a few acronyms on the front there. The RFI stage, request for information. This is really, this stage of the process marks the beginning of the program design phase for DOE. And so we solicit comments from the public, whether that's individuals, stakeholders, businesses, cities, states, what have you. We open it up for public comment and say, look, this is the statute that Congress gave us. We want to hear your perspective on it. How do you think that this should be implemented so we can get the most sort of bang for our buck here? After the RFI period closes, DOE experts get together, program experts get together, and they start designing the program. And once they have some of those elements ready to go, some of the basic framework of the program, we go into the NOI stage. The NOI stands for Notice of Intent. And so this is an announcement that DOE puts out to signal to the public, look, we have the parameters sort of, fleshed out. And we want to give you a heads up that an application is going to be opening, sometime within the next 6-9 months, any sort of given short to medium term time frame. This is a signal to outside stakeholders, outside of DOE, that they can start thinking about how they're going to approach the application process, how they can start planning some of their project level strategy as well. After that, we get into the funding opportunity announcement, the FOA, the FOA. This marks, applications are open now. Once DOE posts the funding opportunity announcement, we are open for applications. And so these generally have, some of our projects have a mandatory concept paper that basically it's what it sounds like. An applicant demonstrates what what a given project would look like, what they would do with the money, that sort of thing at a high level. And then we go into the full application deadline, where it's, of course, as you'd imagine, a lot more due diligence on behalf of DOE and the applicant. After the FOA deadline closes, DOE is in possession of all applications. We go into the selection process. And so this is when you'll see on those bullets here, applications are reviewed and selected for award negotiation by civil servants with subject matter expertise. This is a merit-based review process for these competitive selections, again, driven by career civil servants at the department. Once a selection is made based on certain criteria that are met, points, that sort of thing, we get into the negotiation stage. And so this is an additional layer of due diligence in which the selected applicant enters into one-on-one conversations with the department about specific terms of an agreement. Once we come to terms on that agreement, we can then issue the award, the financial assistance award, or the competitive grant in this case. You'll see that last bullet there, given the merit-based process, we have very limited ability to give non-public information or take meetings on specific projects. I don't want this to come off as we can't answer questions about the program or program level items, because we definitely can. If you have questions about the process, we can definitely answer those. But specific application or project level questions are a little bit more difficult for us to answer once a funding opportunity announcement is live. And so this is just a sort of different visualization of that same process that I just described. I won't go into this again since I just described it, but that blue arrow at the bottom, I do want to highlight that says attend program specific stakeholder engagement events and webinars. Our program teams do a fantastic job of getting out either, on the ground, in in-person events, but also as well as webinars, different stakeholder consultations, that sort of process, to get direct feedback from the public and answer questions in a more personal sort of setting. Again, as Spencer mentioned, all of these resources are on energy.gov /infrastructure, and that website will be at the end of this webinar too, and in the slide deck once it's sent around by the Congresswoman's office. But I did want to bring special attention to that. And so here's the other side of funding that DOE, that the Office of Infrastructure engages in, is those were competitive grants. These are formula opportunities. So formula grants are when Congress gives us direction, say, this is how the home rebates program is going to play out. So Congress gives us a pot of money. In that case, it's around $8.5 billion. And they say, design a program, but then we want the states to administer it. And so basically DOE creates larger, sort of broader guardrails and frameworks about how rules of the road, if you will, about how a program should be implemented. And then we give that money over to states and larger, municipalities, localities, and they actually implement the program on the ground. And so here you'll see the first step in that is determining the formula allocation. That's the amount of money that a state, local government, or tribe will be allocated through DOE by Congress. And then we get into the application phase of that, which is the administrative and legal requirements document. I know it's ALRD. And that is, again, solicitation of applications. And so once that ALRD goes live, a state or a city would apply to DOE to get those funds released to them. After that, it's up to the state or city to implement the program with DOE oversight. Again, here that bottom blue arrow there, that's pointing right. Attending specific stakeholder and engagement events in webinars. I think, again, especially for formula opportunities, a lot of those flow through our Office of State and Community Energy Programs. So if anyone on this call is part of a municipality or a state organization, highly recommend signing up for their mailing list on the energy.gov website. So now we can get into, now that we have that level setting out of the way, we can get into some of the program highlights and overviews of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. And so here on the left, you'll see the battery and critical material supply chain program as part of our domestic manufacturing initiative. Program to fund our battery supply chain manufacturing, and this includes refining raw materials, component manufacturing, assembly, and recycling of old batteries for second life use. There's $3 billion remaining in the program. We already noticed $3 billion toward the end of last year. Those selection negotiations are ongoing. And eligible entities here are businesses who are sort of in the battery or battery component sector who are looking to expand their manufacturing capacity. Again, that second round of $3 billion is expected later this summer or early fall of this year. On the right side here, you'll see our domestic conversion grants. So these are targeted toward automobile manufacturers or component manufacturers who are looking to transition from building internal combustion engine components over to components for electric vehicles. This is a $2 billion program. And again, that same sort of timeline of late summer, early fall for those who are interested in that. Under our sort of decarbonizing and growing American industry vertical, we have the industrial emissions program. This is, as you'll see at the bottom there on the status, the FOA, the funding opportunity announcement, was released in March. Concept papers were due in April, and the full application deadline is in August. So an example here would be, a steel company would receive a grant through the Industrial Emissions Program to do a full facility retrofit to bring them to near net zero to produce green steel. And so these are for hard to abate industries and businesses like steel, cement, paper, those sorts of sectors. On the right side here, the Industrial Assessment Center expansion. So this is a program that's already going on at the 4-year college and university level that we're expanding to community colleges, trade schools, and union training programs to help expand their pathways to clean energy and manufacturing jobs. This is a $150 million program. So that's again targeted at institutions of higher education. So an example here would be a community college would receive a grant to establish an industrial assessment center to train students on how to conduct energy efficiency assessments at smaller and medium-sized manufacturing facilities within like a given region. And then, so once those individuals are trained, they can go out to these manufacturing facilities, see where they can make some energy efficiency improvements. And then DOE also has this separate program, an $80 million program that will fund grants to these small and medium-sized businesses to implement the changes that are recommended by these IAC or Industrial Assessment Center graduates. And so it's a holistic sort of program. We're getting ready to, or actually we announced just this morning those implementation grants, as we're calling them, $300,000 for a business to implement these recommendations by these graduates of such programs. So definitely excited about that. You'll see the concept paper deadline has been extended to June 16th for community colleges, trade schools, and union training programs to get involved in this initiative. Moving to the next slide, under our Investing in Communities vertical, on the left side, you'll see the energy efficiency and conservation block grants for folks who were in state and local government during the Recovery Act in 2009. This program should be familiar. This is a modernization and a plus up of the appropriations for this program that was originally designed during the Recovery Act. This is a little more than $500 million. And I think the main takeaway from the energy efficiency and conservation block grant program is how flexible the use is. So this is like basically states and local governments who receive this money have a lot of leeway to implement it. So this could be something like a local government converting their municipal fleet to EVs, or the installation of solar panels on municipal buildings, or say there are street lights and traffic lights that are aging and can be replaced by higher efficiency ones throughout the community. That can be, the EECBG, as we call it, money can be used to those ends. You'll see that there's a so this is a formula grant, as I mentioned earlier. So this is $430 million in this round for formula grants to states, and so state and local governments. So to see if you were eligible, this goes through the State and Community Energy Program Office as well. Recommend going to the website, and then you'll see a link there, and you'll have access to this link later after this presentation gets sent out for the pre-award information sheet. This is basically filling out the necessary information for DOE to know who is what states and local governments are applying for the fund, to cross-check eligibility and so forth. And then on the right side here, the clean energy demonstrations on former mine land. This is up to $500 million for up to 5 grants or cooperative agreements for projects that can basically bring new clean energy projects to former mine land. It's exactly what it sounds like. And so an example here, an energy developer wants to utilize former mine land to build out a solar project to deliver clean power and maximize employment opportunities in an area where a former coal mine had left or previously been. And so those applications are due at the end of August. On our communities vertical, these programs are both administered by the Office of State and Community Energy Programs. On the left side, Renew America's Nonprofits. This is for 501 buildings owned and operated by 501c3 nonprofits to boost their energy efficiency. And so you'll see here the status. There's a deadline for a letter of intent. These are not required to submit a full application, but if you'd like to submit one, of course, it's June 29th, and then full applications are due on August 3rd. So the way that this will work, and I have a slide right behind this one that will better visualizes this, but a prime recipient gets the award, which is a 501c3 organization that has history and expertise in working with nonprofits in an area, and working in energy efficiency would of course be ideal. And then they basically sub grant whatever money they get to what we call a sub recipient, who are also 501c3 nonprofits, who then actually make the energy efficiency improvements in their buildings. And so, like I said, better visualized in the next slide, but we can go into more detail there. On the right side, Renew America Schools. These are grants to support energy infrastructure improvements at public school facilities. The first round of this recently closed, where our career folks are going through applications now and anticipating selections very soon at some point this month. And then we're going to have a second round in the next fiscal year. There's a very popular program, and I think a lot of our local communities can make really good use of it. And so here's the teaming model that I tried to describe earlier. So the prime recipient would serve as the program lead here. And then, as you can see, they curate a portfolio of potential 501c3s who could make energy efficiency improvements to their facilities. The sub-recipients are the folks whose buildings will actually be impacted by these improvements. The partners don't have to be 501c3s, but they can provide technical assistance, planning, strategy, financial management, that sort of thing, to a given project. Here we have our grid resilience program, Grid Resilience Innovation Partnership Program, what we know as GRIP. So this is $10.5 billion over three sort of topic areas that enhance grid flexibility, improve resilience, and improve efficiency against extreme weather. So these are also mostly an element of these are formula grants to states, and then an element of these are competitive grants to utilities, public utility commissions, institutions of higher education, and so forth. An example here would be an electric grid operator wants to underground their electrical equipment and weatherize some of their technologies to make them less susceptible to adverse events and physical harm. So think physical attacks, wildfires, strong winds, tornadoes, that sort of thing. This program is going on sort of a rolling basis, and more information on this one can be found through our grid deployment office at the department. And here is what I referenced earlier, our home efficiency rebates and our home electrification and appliance rebates. For the home efficiency rebates, this is a program, again, a formula program that's administered by states and tribes for folks who want to purchase home efficiency upgrades that save at least 20% of the home's energy use. And so it's a $4.3 billion program administered by states, targeted toward low and moderate income households. I believe the income limits up to 150% of the area median income for eligibility here. But again, these are efficiency upgrades like insulation, like weatherproofing, like windows, roofs, and so forth. And then on the right side, the home electrification and appliance rebates. This is the same sort of, I believe it's up to 150% of area median income. But I will double check that and correct with the Congresswoman staff if I'm off on that. But administered by states, and this is designed, I mean, we're still in the early program design phases of both of these, but this will be designed to give folks a point of sale, if they're eligible, a point of sale rebate on a high efficiency electric home appliance. So think a heat pump water heater, an electric stove, high efficiency dryer, those sorts of major appliances where these rebates, and I'll show you a tool here at the end of our presentation. These rebates can have a pretty big impact on the cost. I think for a stove, it was up to like $900 a rebate per appliance. And so again, these are in the early design phases. Rebates vary based on household income, but we're expecting to have the very first tranche of funds out to states by late this year, early next year. I will, sort of note that once we give funds to states, states will have to take their own time to implement these programs on the ground and ensure that things can work efficiently in the way that they're supposed to with DOE oversight. I will also advise folks that these rebates are not retroactive. And so if you were to buy an energy efficient electric home appliance now, you couldn't turn that receipt in once Delaware has this program going and get your rebate then. So I would advise against doing so if you're interested in receiving a rebate. And then lastly, on the program side, I touched on this a little bit earlier as well, the transportation EV infrastructure. This is largely deployed by the Department of Transportation, but the Department of Energy works with DOT through our Joint Office of Energy and Transportation on a lot of the design and strategy on the back end of our EV infrastructure build out. And so I want to point out here the charging and fueling infrastructure, the CFI discretionary grant program. There's $700 million open for application for states, local governments, tribes, metropolitan planning organizations to apply to build EV charging infrastructure along designated alternative fuel corridors, as well as to fill in gaps between those corridors. And so the alternative fuel corridors, if you look at a map online, if you just Google that phrase, it's along major highways and interstates. But the discretionary grant program really also targets some of the communities and roadways that are pretty widely used that aren't major highways or interstates. And so this gives states and local governments an opportunity to, like I said, fill in the gaps there. More information on that is at driveelectric.gov if you're interested on that front. And then if you want to reach out to Spencer or I, we are more than happy to connect you to folks at the joint office as well. I will do a little demo here on the Clean Energy Savings Hub, but this is a newer tool that we have to show. It's like a compendium of incentives and rebates that are available or will be available, including tax credits for the purchase of energy efficient and appliances and equipment, as well as weatherization of your home. And so, like I said, I'll go through these later, but energy.gov/save is a tremendous tool for planning out how you can make the best use of a lot of these new programs. On the technical assistance side, so in terms of finding out what opportunities are available to you, how to navigate some of the application process, that sort of thing. Our State and Community Energy Programs Office has what we call the State and Local Solutions Center, energy.gov/SCEP/SLSC, the hyperlinks there. So these are for state and local governments as well as schools to help, again, navigate not only the process by which a lot of these programs are moving forward, but also for resources, webinars, engagement events that are available to outside stakeholders to learn more about what we're working on. On the right side there, I wanted to highlight the EPA's Thriving Community Technical Assistance Centers, what they're calling TIC-TACs. The National Wildlife Federation is the lead regional TIC-TAC for the Mid-Atlantic region, including Delaware. And they're partnering with academic institutions across the Mid-Atlantic region, as well as nonprofits, to help folks, organizations, individuals navigate a lot of the new programs that are coming out of the bill and IRA. So I highly recommend you check the Thriving Community Technical Assistance Centers out too if you have additional questions. I will note that first bullet here, DOE can't provide like actual one-on-one assistance in filling out an application, but of course, like I said earlier, we're always available to answer any questions that you might have on programs, on eligibility, that sort of thing. We just can't physically help you fill out an application. And here, energy.gov/infrastructure, highly recommend you check it out. Everything is updated very frequently, actually. And then you'll see all of our program offices there too. So I mentioned state and community energy programs a lot. I mentioned the grid deployment office. I mentioned the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations. Pretty much all of our program offices have their own landing page at which you can sign up for a newsletter. And so those newsletters go out on varying timeframes, but mostly weekly. And then anytime there's a big funding opportunity announcement or RFI that goes out or notice of intent that goes out, they'll send it out to the mailing list. So you'll always be up to date about what's coming next. You'll also find that funding opportunities table that basically show, it's like a status update on where every bill and IRA provision is at. And so I highly recommend you check that out as well. Here is our contact information for Spencer and I. Again, we'll share these with the Congresswoman's office so that they can be circulated to the group here. But please don't hesitate to reach out. If we don't have the answer, we're more than happy to connect you to a program expert who does have an answer. And so I wanted to quickly demonstrate, if I could here, the Energy Savings Hub. And so it's energy.gov/save. And so here, so say I'm a homeowner, I'm trying to look at, what would be available to me. Click there, scroll down. I mentioned the Weatherization Assistance Program. Here's a little bit of information on that. The Low Income Energy Assistance Program through the Department of Health and Human Services. But then here are some of the incentives that are coming out of the bill and IRA. And so say I was looking at, say on home improvement, I wanted to look and see what was available to me if I wanted to do rooftop solar on my house. And so click that, the little card turns. So, okay, there's a tax credit available. 30% of the cost that you pay is available to you in the form of a tax credit. And so you fill out this form 5695, that's hyperlinked here. And then there are additional sort of energy or resources here from the IRS on the tax years that these are eligible for, how much maximum lifetime limit, what have you. And so as you see here, if I was doing it in tax year 23, 30% of what I pay, no annual maximum or lifetime limit. And so I think that that's like a really, really good tool. Again, here you can toggle between appliances or home improvement. Say I wanted an electric stove, I could get a rebate. This is what I mentioned in the home electrification rebates. It notes that not yet available, but stay tuned. Something is coming in that space as I described. And so, yeah, I just wanted to give folks an opportunity to check that out and demonstrate it too. But I will pass it back over to Iris so we can open it up for questions.
Thanks, Yusuf. You actually answered a lot of our questions during your presentation, so it was very well done. So we do have a few questions for you outside of those. So Jenny from Kent says, I've never applied for federal funding before. How can I make my application strong? What is the DOE looking for?
I think, and Spencer, please feel free to chime in. I'd like to get your thoughts on this too, but I think a lot of it depends on the program. And so I highly recommend if there's a program of interest to you, going to that program's website. There is an FAQ that I find, even working at DOE, I find our FAQ docs to be very, very helpful and informative when navigating a lot of these pieces. There's an email inbox that you can get in contact with program folks directly to the team who is working on these program specifically to see, what are the eligibility criteria here? How, do you recommend making a stronger application? And so forth. But I think the bottom line is like, utilize the resources that are made available online, as well as the webinars and stakeholder engagement events, because they do hold a lot of value in my opinion. But I'll kick it to Spencer.
Yeah, I would just add a lot of the stakeholders that I work directly with are, either governor's offices, to mayors of smaller towns, to, administrators of smaller towns. And the thing that I keep coming back to is there are a couple of things. The first is webinars. DOE hosts a number of webinars, especially our new office here that Yusuf just kind of gave you an overview of. And I can't tell you enough, please go to those. I think the second piece is there are a number of amazing organizations doing work with communities, with those who are maybe applying for funding for the first time, to go over like, where do you even start? And so, a lot of smaller communities may not have the staff, or they may not have the ability. There are actually folks who will take you through a webinar that will kind of walk you through the different steps. And so just keep an eye out for those two resources. We can't be a one-stop shop, as Yusuf said, but what we can do is just look at the resources that we've seen others use and try to pass those best practices on.
Thank you. Next, we have Charles from Newcastle asks, do individuals have options to apply individually or as a neighborhood small group for grant or money saving energy options?
I think here it also sort of depends on what you're looking at. So certainly for the electrification and home energy efficiency, those are on an individual level. And that's not necessarily like an application, but definitely a benefit that flows straight to the consumer, right? On some of these other ones, like say the Renew America's nonprofits, that encourages sort of a teaming model, right? Where you're working across the community, across a given neighborhood, if there are certain nonprofits that are dispersed throughout there too. So I think it really just depends on the nature of the program, but there are certainly opportunities available on all fronts, whether you're one business, private sector business looking for something, you're a group of businesses or organizations, or you're just an individual consumer.
I just add some of that background documentation too with the application. Generally speaking, kind of sets forth, what they're looking for. And Yusuf, as you said during the presentation, that's normally clear. And so, where it does say partner with others, obviously you want to make sure you do that. I think the only other thing that I would add there is, in addition to the funds that we talked about today, there are other opportunities that DOE has. I mean, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act provided a number of opportunities. Something that came to mind as you were asking the question was Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations with some rural technical assistance. Those types of opportunities are available both in a group format and at an individual level. And so you want to just make sure, as you're looking through, I mean, I tell people this all the time, sometimes you do have to start with Google and go to the Google machine and say, we're a couple of small communities, we're looking, for an opportunity, because we want some help setting up our own EV charging station. We don't really know where to start. You normally will get there, but that's generally speaking where I have folks start, and then we try to narrow it in as a team.
Thank you. And I think that also goes into our last question, which is from Ruben in Newcastle County. And they ask, are there any incentives or energy grants or anything like that for business owners? I think we talked a little bit about nonprofits. We talked about the consumer. When we think about our small businesses or businesses in our area, are there any grants available for them?
Yeah, I think one that stands out to me is the Industrial Assessment Center sort of expansion for small and medium-sized businesses who are looking to improve their energy efficiency, as well as those Industrial Assessment Center implementation grants that we're following up that program with. That's one that comes to mind for me sort of off the top, but happy to discuss further if you'd like to reach out too.
Thank you. So thank you both to Yusuf and Spencer for spending time with Delaware today and talking about the grants that are coming out of the DOE that's helping out our planet and our constituents. For anyone that has any additional questions for them or need in contact with our office, please feel free to give us a call at 302-830-2330. And lastly, if you have any questions or concerns or anything like that, or want to stay connected, please make sure to sign up for the Congresswoman's newsletter on her website. This will also be on our website as well, where you can come back to look through, use this amazing slideshow to look at some of the grant opportunities. Have a great day and thank you all.
Thank you.